Hey everybody, welcome to the SaaS Founders Show. We're back for another episode where we get to talk to really fascinating founders who have interesting SaaS businesses, and we get to hear all about the journey. So exciting stuff. Joined as usual with my co-host Andy Helko. Andy, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Excited about another show. We've got someone here talking, I think, about cybersecurity, right? Tell me who we're talking to.
Yeah, so we are talking to Purandar Das. He is the co-founder and president of Sotero. They're the next generation data encryption to encrypt data in use and data in motion to realize faster time to value from mission critical data. So with that, let's bring him on. Purandar, how you doing?
I'm doing well, and how about you?
Very good, thank you. We appreciate you taking this time to join us. So we put you there front and center. So awesome. So I read the description of your business. I would love to hear from your perspective. Tell us what Sotero is all about. We have a little freezing. So Purandar, if you can.
Oh no. This happens sometimes with technology, right?
This happens with technology.
We're in cybersecurity. We're talking cybersecurity. Maybe we got hacked. I don't know.
That is possible.
Going on. But this is the fun of it.
This is the fun of it.
Tony, how's your new dog?
He's good. He can be a hassle at times, but he's worth it. So we're going.
I'm sure that's exactly what people tuned in to hear.
I'm sure. So I'm going to send him a quick message. Okay, looks like he dropped off. So why don't we talk? Let's wait for him to hopefully jump back in. But until then, I didn't have a chance actually to talk about it today. But Tech Throwdown, we got that coming up. And we'll bring Purandar back on. It looks like he's there. Andy, give us the 30-second what Tech Throwdown's all about.
Yeah, we've got an upcoming
participate.
We've got a really cool thing coming up, a pitch contest for startups. You can submit, win some money. We've got some cash prizes. We've got some in-kind services from some really amazing companies, even mentoring and coaching from some folks. So if you're interested, go to the link. You're a SaaS startup, and add so that you can pitch in at the Tech Throwdown, baby.
Awesome. Let us try this once again. Purandar, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Technical glitches. I apologize.
No problem. Better this time. You're moving.
Yeah.
He froze up on us. So the question that I asked was, just tell us about Sotero. How do you explain the business when you meet someone in the elevator?
Sure. I mean, what we do at Sotero is reimagining cybersecurity, right? I mean, when you think about cybersecurity, it's all about protecting people from getting to data. What we are saying is protect your data first, and then worry about preventing people from getting to the data. Sotero is all about keeping your data encrypted while it's being used, which is a big gap filler, right? I mean, it's a big change in paradigm, a big change in shift in how people imagine cybersecurity or data security more specifically.
Why is that such a shift? Why have most people gone the other direction? And why did you decide to go in, kind of this approach of encryption of data?
Sure. So why have people gone in the other direction, right? Historically, data security products have leveraged encryption, which is about the best security protection you can get. But it comes with a severe limitation, right? If it's encrypted, you can't use the data, right? So even though people say data is encrypted, it essentially is not protected while it's being used. And if you think about organizations, they're using data all the time to drive their business. So essentially, data is not protected while it's being used. I come from a data background, having worked with marketing companies most of my career. Dealing with huge amounts of data, huge amounts of sensitive information is what I did for a living. The aha moment was, hey, the data is stolen because it's not protected while it's in use. How about we figure out a way to keep data protected while it's being used and flip the paradigm on its head, right? And say, start with data. That's what you're trying to protect. That's what everybody's trying to protect. So we wanted to shift the paradigm and say we have a better way of helping organizations protect their information. That was the big flip in our mindset.
So what was the, catalyst for you starting this business? Were you sitting somewhere else, said, this is a huge problem, I've got to solve it? Did you meet some co-founders and, say, we've got to do this together? What was kind of the catalyst that got you started?
So two different factors. One is I was fortunate enough to meet my co-founder, right? We were working together and we'd been thinking about what we could do to start something on our own, right? I mean, you work in large organizations forever and you say, hey, I think we have an idea, we have the skills and we have the passion to build something. But coupled with that was a personal experience where my data was stolen in a breach, right? And I was affected when they attempted to file a tax return in my name, opened credit card applications, and even opened up a bank account, right? So putting the two together and kind of looking at what was being done for data protection, became clear to us that there was a big opportunity, a big gap that needed to be filled or a problem to be solved. And we both were at a point in our career saying we should do something, right? And that something happened to be around data protection because there was a driver that was pushing us towards that.
So going back, Purandar, that's super interesting and awful experience to go through, right? So you had that personal motivation to want to solve that challenge because anyone who's gone through anything, even that is significant, it's painful and it happens all the time. I wanted to go back quickly to just your approach and how you said, protecting data while it's being used. So how do you guys, from a lay, if you're to explain it to the layperson, how do you guys go about doing that?
So very simply, if you visualize your own information in a database somewhere, right? Your name, address, social security number. I mean, they're in probably 1,000 different databases that you have, companies that you interact with, right? Typically, what most of them or all of them do is say, we'll encrypt this data, meaning that it's encrypted when nobody's processing, accessing, or using the data. But the moment you go to access or use it, that data is unencrypted in plain text because they want to search for a Tony or search for Andy, right? Your records and your information. Yeah. The moment you do that, the data is unencrypted, which kind of really there's no protection. So my co-founder Shanti and I said, let's figure out a way to keep Andy and Tony's information encrypted even while it's being queried, processed, or used, right? That way you have much better control, a better security framework to keep the data encrypted from anybody that's not authorized to see it. We not only keep the data encrypted while it's being queried or used, we also validate which user and which application is accessing it in real time and make sure that it is a privileged user or they're authorized to see the data before we decrypt and let them access and view the data. That's essentially our core intellectual property, our patented intellectual property capabilities about being able to process data in its encrypted state.
Super interesting.
Yeah, just to dig into the how a little bit more, I'd love to know, okay, how does an organization implement this? Is it a middleware? Is it something that sits on top of other systems? Is it more for the enterprise or for, mid-market?
I mean, literally my response to that would be is we're commoditizing security, data security, okay. Right? I mean, that's been one of the big challenges with security products. Very expensive, very hard to implement. You have to have lots of money, a lot of budget, and you have to have resources to deploy that. That essentially becomes a big barrier for organizations to adopt security. Our approach is to make it really simple and not just be one platform specific solution, right? We want to be able to protect all of the data in an organization, whether it's sitting in a database, it's in a file somewhere, it's in some semi-structured data stored in the cloud, doesn't really matter. We set ourselves design objectives when we started to build the product and said the biggest thing, because keep in mind, we are actually coming from the flip side of the thing. We're not cryptographers or security experts, right? We came from the other side of having consumed security products, and we knew the headaches and the challenges. So we said it's got to be easy to use. it's got to be inexpensive relatively so that everybody can afford it. And it's got to be a product that protects all of the data in an ecosystem, not just one, because you don't want to be dealing with 35 products to protect data. We said, let's build it in a way where it can scale and at a effective price point, be able to help any company protect their data, whether it's in their premise, in their data center, or in the cloud. So to your question, it essentially is like a middleware. So if you're familiar with data or database technologies, we look like a ODBC, JDBC, or a database driver. That's literally all that's needed to implement Sotero. And what that also does is it eliminates the need to modify applications to leverage our security framework. We don't require applications to be modified at all, which is another big headache when it comes to rolling out security products.
I'm kind of curious that something you said is that, you weren't from a cybersecurity background. You're more a consumer, had a challenge. So how did you then get into it? And how did you understand to build something when you're starting from that perspective?
Yeah, but keep in mind that we, like I mentioned, we were dealing with billions of consumer records, right? I mean, we were helping companies monetize information. That was the marketing industry, right? Go collect information, gather information, collate it, aggregate it, be able to analyze it and act on it, which meant we were sitting on billions of consumer records with sensitive information. So all of the problems as it relates to scale, speed to market, processing, we were very familiar with. We were also familiar with the challenges posed by security products that essentially were bottlenecks to utilizing information, right? If you used a security product, all it did was put bottlenecks in your way, right? So we said, hey, we know both ends of the story. Let's figure out an architecture that makes it easy to deploy, easy to embrace, and easy to consume, while providing a platform that preserved security and privacy, but also enabled faster time to value, right? You don't want to spend a month trying to anonymize data or obfuscate data so you can share it, act on it. We do that in minutes, right? You can take your sensitive data, deploy it, share it with whoever you want to, securely in the knowledge that nobody's going to be able to see the data that you don't want them to see. But they're able to extract the value that you want them to extract from the data.
Yeah. So our audience is a lot of founders. Do you mind talking a little bit about what did the startup process look like? What was the first, 6 months of trying to build a company?
Sure. I mean, having the idea was easy, right? Then trying to figure out how to build a product was a challenging piece, because you have all the ideas, then you need the right skills, right? And then it's a trial and error process to get the architecture right, get the design right, and you also need to get a lot of feedback from people that are potentially customers or prospects telling you this works in my environment, or this is not going to work. So the early year or so was a challenging piece. I mean, what got us through the thing was the passion and the belief that we were onto something and that there was an opportunity there. We were also very fortunate to have good interactions with friends and a wide network that gave us invaluable feedback as we started out on this journey. Obviously, that support, belief is what got us through that challenging period.
How did you handle, we talk a lot about MVPs, minimum viable products. What were you able to put out there to start getting feedback, and how did you create that?
So we were probably a bit lucky in that context, because remember our background, we had enough knowledge to build out an initial product, right? I mean, we had enough implementation experience, practical real life experience in using data, using databases, and using applications. So we were able to craft a lot of the capabilities. Where we got feedback was performance, right? The speed, the performance, and the scale that we needed to be, the different database storage technologies, the different interfaces, and the challenges that different applications posed when they were talking to data stores. So that's where we got a lot of feedback as we deployed the early versions of the product into the market.
Purandar, I'd like to hear a little bit about the co-founder dynamic and what does that look like? How have you gone from having this idea early on to building this business? How do you guys strategize? How do you work together? What are your strengths? What's the relationship there?
The relationship has been awesome. I'll say this. One of the things we realized early on was working around two characters, I would say. One is integrity in interaction, being honest, open, acknowledging challenges. And the other thing was working with acknowledging that we needed to be extremely resilient as we went through this thing. Startup world, there are more no's than yeses, right? Whether you're selling a product, pitching a product, having somebody talk to you, there are more no's than yeses, right, across the board. Building a technology product, there's lots of challenges. What you have in your mind is not how it works. Dealing with each other very openly and honestly is a big factor. We both have similar strengths and differences, right? We both come from technical backgrounds, so we have that area that we can relate to each other and help each other out. She's my co-founder, Shanti, is a lot more in-depth from an architecture and a technology perspective, so that helps. I kind of joke around and say I throw the ideas out. She makes it work. I've been more on the outward facing in terms of getting feedback, talking to prospects, pitching customers, pitching investors. So it's worked out well. It's worked out really well.
So you said you came from a marketing background, correct?
Yep.
How did that help you grow the business? Obviously, that's an advantage, having that skill set, and then also having, technical acumen, you and your co-founder. But what was the approach from a marketing standpoint early on?
So from a marketing perspective, I'll say I come from a marketing technology perspective. I'm aware of marketing, but it's more marketing technology, building large solutions to facilitate marketing. I am familiar with it. Truly, in all reality, our marketing has gotten a boost once we got our head of marketing on board. She's been able to take the messaging, the content to a level that we couldn't have done it ourselves. She's been very influential in kind of helping package the messaging, identifying the right audiences, developing the right pitch, and even reaching out to the right channels to get in front of people and get our message out there.
I'd love to hear a little bit about that. That's something that, I think Andy and I talk a lot about, work with clients on, but those really foundational elements, getting the messaging right, articulating what it is that Sotero does, and making that resonate with the target audience. How did you guys work through that?
Yeah, for a technology product, most technology-oriented founders tend to believe that their product is so good that it's going to sell itself. Really, there isn't a bigger misconception out there, right? You could have the greatest product, but if you're not getting the message out there, if you're not getting in front of the right people at the right time with the right pitch, you're really not going to make much progress. Acknowledging that limitation on our part was a big step for us, right? We were very successful in working our networks, getting to the right people, getting the right feedback, getting early adoption and all that. But really, we wouldn't have been able to scale if we hadn't acknowledged that we needed a professional to come in and help us with the marketing. That for somebody that spent 2 decades in the marketing industry, that was an eye-opener for me, right? In terms of how effective finding the right audience, finding the right message is critical to scaling the product.
That's great. And along those lines, we got a question that just came in. It says, given your marketing background, what was one piece of advice that you'd give to early stage founders who are trying to get the word out about their product or service?
Really, this may sound like a lazy answer, but I believe this. Find somebody that can help you get to the right channel, get to the right audience. You're not going to be able to do this by yourself. especially if you don't have experience or you're not familiar with this thing. It's critical to partner with somebody, even if it's a part-time partnership, to find the right channels, the right platforms, the right message. In the long term, it's well worth the money that you spend. It's not all about technology. It's about evangelizing. It's about getting the message out there.
I kind of want to go back to something that you said, and always sticks out to me. We talk about perseverance a lot in being in a startup, and you said you're going to face a lot of no's and yeses. How do you, as a person, handle those challenges that you face as a founder and the no's? And, sometimes when you hear stories about startups, you see the good things and the highs, but no one sees or hears about the lows. So can you just talk about the mentality of being a founder and trying to build a business?
Absolutely. You are so right about everybody wants to talk about all the highs, right? Nobody wants to acknowledge the challenges that you go through. I'll go back to what you asked me about my interaction or my dynamic with the co-founder, right? One of the things that we agreed on at the very beginning was we were not going to build the perfect product on day one. Right, we were going to evolve. We needed to be ready to pivot based on the feedback and based on the way the market pushed us or the customer base pushed us. That helped a lot, right? Having somebody to talk to about the constant no's that you get is critical, right? It's just a part of the process. It's not personal, though it tends to feel like it's personal. But you have to have the resiliency to just get through that phase. I mean, as much as you believe in the product, as much as you think it's solving a problem, that's not the message that resonates with everybody, right? You still need to find somebody with a need, right? That you have to, and finding that somebody with a need is obviously like 1 in 100, 1 in 200, but you have to go through that process. Having a good support system that you can just talk about those, talk about the lows is critical.
Were there other people that you had in your circle besides your founder? We talk a lot about mentors. Some of our founders talk about their family and how they support them during this process. What did your circle look like to give you what you needed to, launch and go forward?
Support from the family is critical, right? Especially when you're doing a startup, you're throwing off your safety net. You've been successful in your career, and you decide to give it all up and go. So support from the family is critical. Building a network of peers, mentors that will guide you through the thing, help you maintain sanity, and also offer advice, connections, networks is extremely critical. We were fortunate. I was fortunate. Family, of course, but also had a fair number of people that have been supportive throughout this journey.
That's great. Just one other thing that you mentioned is that you didn't expect the product to be perfect at first. And you're going to pivot, evolve. It's kind of an overused quote, but if you're proud of what you launch, you probably waited too long. How do you feel about that idea of getting out quickly and, iterating rather than trying to get something that really is your dream product?
With technology, I will say there's no such thing as waiting to build a perfect product. It doesn't happen, right? I mean, for many reasons. It's not just that you can't visualize the end product, but the circumstances change. The technology whole ecosystem is changing so rapidly, right? I mean, if you I'll give you an example. I mean, if you think about where breaches were like 4 or 5 years ago to where they are, nobody was talking about ransomware 4 years ago. Today, all everybody talks about is ransomware because that's how the criminal aspect of this has evolved. So you have to be ready, right, to pivot, to change your strategy, change your technology, change your product. And in the whole quote about rubber meeting the road, right? Once your product is out there in real use, every weakness that it has gets highlighted. Right, lack of features, lack of performance, lack of integration, everything gets highlighted. So sitting and waiting around to build a perfect product is not a great strategy. You have to get it out there, take your lumps, and learn with the process.
I totally agree.
With the, to that point of how rapidly technology changes and shifts, were there any shifts in the landscape of cybersecurity that you guys weren't ready for that negatively impacted the business, that was a challenge that you had to really work through, that kind of was a threat?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you go back to the beginning of the conversation, and I was telling you about what we did, right? We protect data, and in our early vision was to protect data in relational databases under the assumption that most data was in relational database. Guess what? Over the last couple of years, we've realized that that is as true as that is. There is an equal amount of data or a larger amount of data in unstructured data stores. Right? And that's where a lot of the risk is. Migration to the cloud happened as we were building this out and rolling out the product. So we had to be ready for that. A lot of that we had addressed in how we architected the product to be able to consume that in the on-premise or in the cloud. But it still led us needing to support unstructured data, a large number of data stores that we hadn't thought of that were really prevalent in the cloud. Right, so we were doing all of this, and then the ransomware wave started, which kind of pushed us in the direction of needing to protect files or unstructured data because that's where a bulk of the attacks are happening. Right, so we had to evolve. But there's a positive side to all this. As much as we had to evolve and modify our solution, that's actually led us to starting to offer and visualize a much broader security capability than we ever thought of back then. Right, we had thought about securing data in siloed or independent data stores. Now we're evolving towards a position where we can offer a data security fabric that enables an organization to protect data anywhere, all the time, regardless of where the data is stored, what format it's stored in, and what applications talk to it. So it's helped us a lot. Right, we've gone from being what people could perceive us as being a siloed, small footprint data security to becoming potentially a security fabric that organizations can adopt to consistently secure and protect their information anywhere, all the time. So it's been good. It's been good. It's been challenging.
It's really interesting. I would love to hear a little bit. We talk to SaaS founders all the time here. And something we often like to hear is how you get your users' feedback on how you make improvements, add feature sets, plan out the roadmap. With this type of software that you offer, where it's security, right? It's something that is essentially passive from the user perspective. They're probably not actively thinking about it. The goal is they don't have to really think about it. How does that differ for you to collect that feedback?
I would question that they're not actively thinking about it, right? It depends on which group of users you're referring to. I mean, if you think about the security teams, right, they're thinking of nothing but this all the time, right? I mean, they just literally live, breathe, and sleep about security. We get a ton of feedback. We talk directly to our marketing group organizes regular conversation with CISOs. For them we don't sell to them. We just tell them what we're doing and collect feedback from them about how they visualize the thing, where they think the shortcomings in the product are, or what features are critical. We take a lot of that feedback to help drive the product direction. Where we don't want users to think about security is the end users or the folks that consume the data. They should feel confident that the data is secure, but they can extract all of the value and execute all of their operations on the data without needing to worry about security. That essentially is the value proposition of Sotero, right? We want to take that pain away from the end users. We want them to not think about it and be secure in the knowledge that the data is secured and their privacy is assured. The CISOs, the security folks, the technical folks, they give us a lot of feedback. We solicit feedback actively. Right, without selling to them, because selling to them, we don't want to sell them and say, give us your feedback and we'll build these two things and buy it from us. We want it to be objective. We want them to tell us why our product or why our approach is not going to work for them, and what do we have to do to make it work for them. That way we solicit and get candid feedback, or objective feedback, I should say.
I'm kind of interested to get your perspective just generally on the security industry and what's going on. Over the last couple of years, the ransomware story has gotten big. I hear about it just personally, with folks that I talk to, of them having scenarios like that. Literally, I think 2 days ago, the Insivia team got hit with a potential, scam where it was pretending to be me to my employees. What does security look like right now? What are the challenges we face? And, what do you think that it looks like in the next couple of years?
There's a lot of, there are many, many factors, right, about what security looks like today. The first thing is security is focused on the perimeter, right? It's about trying to keep people out. It's never been focused on protecting data, right? Even though the encryption thing exists, but it's more about securing access to the network, preventing people from getting into the network. The challenge with that is in today's world, systems are so interconnected. So there are so many integrations, right? There's no such thing as a simple network or a simple ecosystem anymore. They're just really incredibly complex. The cloud added to that because the applications are on the cloud, your data is with someone else, your encryption keys could potentially be with someone else. So even though you think you're secure, your data and your keys could be in the hands of someone else, right? And you're going across all these integration points to access and operate on the data, right? And there's been this whole notion of layering defensive mechanisms one on top of another to make it more secure. What that's leading to is an extremely complex legacy mess, right? Part of which you have visibility and control, and part of which you don't. Where you use third-party integrations, third-party products, you're counting on them to keep their products secure. But as you've seen with ransomware today, they're leveraging those as carrier vehicles to inject malware into your system. So you have no visibility or control about that, right? It's a very complex, really complex ecosystem. You come to ransomware, what used to be a very simplistic email phishing scam has now evolved into becoming such a complex, sophisticated thing that the skills and talent on the folks that are executing these things are often much better than the folks that are trying to build security products. Because, simply, there's just so much money in it. Yeah. Right? It's an economy by itself. I think the focus on securing data, right, and validating that the whole notion of zero trust or trust but verify, simplifying security mechanisms is going to continue. It will need to evolve. The cloud is the future. I'm not making a bold statement at this point about that. On-premise based systems are eventually going to go away. Everything's going to be in the cloud, whether it's applications, data, as much as some organizations want to fight it, that's where the future is. Organizations need to step up and take ownership of security and privacy, regardless of where the data lives, right? From the marketing space, a huge portion of the marketing industry works where companies share data. When you share data, you're essentially losing control of it. That's not going to be acceptable in the future. You need to be able to stay in control of data, even though you've shared it with someone else. How's that possible, right? That's the whole notion of creating a secure data sharing network or a secure security fabric where you're in control of the data all the time, right? And you have access and privileges to see who's accessing, when they access it, and why they're accessing it, and staying in control of that. The whole notion of saying it's with a third party or it's somebody, a cloud service provider, and I'm secure is not going to fly anymore.
Yeah, it makes sense, and what you're trying to do is makes a lot of sense. One more thing about just kind of generally cybersecurity and security is I just read an article and it talked about how certain countries, there's no penalty as long as their hackers are not focused on people within their own country. And it makes me think like, okay, this problem is not going to get any better. So I'm just kind of curious about your gut reaction to things like that, and the fear that we need to have as business owners, consumers, whatever, about security?
I mean, it certainly is something that everybody should worry about, right? Whether you're the consumer, a business owner, a thing. I mean, it's also no secret that practically everybody's data has already been hacked and it's available somewhere, right? I mean, it's just no secret about it.
Right.
You can pretty much buy anything, right? So now, how do you counter that? You counter that by eliminating the ability for people to monetize that, right? I mean, having your social security number and stuff is great, but monetizing it means you're either trying to create a bank account, steal credentials to steal money, or open up a credit card. It's about how you limit the criminals from leveraging or monetizing that information. To your point, I mean, I have a slightly different perspective on countries supporting criminals, right? I tend to believe that this has always happened, right? But it's happened in the smaller portion of stealing state secrets or proprietary information about processes or products. What is now happening is that same framework is being leveraged to generate billions of dollars in revenue, quote unquote revenue.
Right.
So obviously, everybody involved, including the countries that sponsor these guys, are benefiting from some portion of that revenue. And as long as there's money to be made, they're not going anywhere. They're just going to keep getting better. Like we've seen with ransomware, it's evolved so dramatically in sophistication and in technical capabilities that it's scary, right? It's evolving faster than the capability to protect yourself. So yeah, keeping up with them. I mean, and then that's where companies like ours, and this is not a plug for ours, but companies like ours that are innovating on security approaches, security frameworks are going to be critical. Letting go of that legacy belief that you're secure in defense in depth and layering product upon product, that's not going to work.
Yeah, I think if you're not in the security space, you probably don't realize that they're, and again, I'm probably even not that knowledgeable, but you think of there are offices of people that are focused all day long on types of scams, and there are extremely intelligent people out there, better than what are in some of the security companies that are coming up with new methods. And so it's a constant battle no matter what.
Absolutely right. I mean, and there's always the inertia, right? If you have a large operational system, you have to deal with people complaining about you can't make that inaccessible. That can't be down for any amount of time. And we've got budget constraints. And all of these are essentially slowing down the adoption of new security and innovation. If you flip over to the other group, they have no such inertia. They have all the motivation and the drive to be as quick and nimble as possible, because the faster they are, the more money they're making. So that mindset has to change as well. And I think you've seen that being acknowledged all the way down from the administration, right? Now they had open conversations about getting the private industry involved. Everybody's making billions of dollars in commitments. That's just an acknowledgement of how bad the problem really is.
It's crazy. It's a game of cat and mouse.
It is. It is.
Yeah. Shifting gears a little bit, I would love to hear about how you guys have grown, like funding wise. Did you raise funds? Did you bootstrap? What did that all look like?
Yeah, so we bootstrapped the first couple of years while we were validating the product concept and finding early adopters. You asked about finding good support and stuff. Finding good investors is critical. Right. I mean, there's a lot of money out there, and there's this notion that people refer to, and I wouldn't call it that, but they call it dumb money, right? There's money, people are willing to give you money, but as a founder, I'll tell you, finding the right backers, right investors that not just give you the money, but also believe in the product, believe in the concept, and believe in the founders is critical. It's critical because nothing goes the way you think it's going to go, right? There's challenges. Having good investors that can be sounding boards, that can help you work through issues, through challenges, and continue to give you support as you grow is critical. We've been fortunate to find a group of investors that are completely supportive of us and back us. We did raise money back in 2019. We've been fortunate that the same group of investors have continued to back us multiple times so far, just because they see the opportunity and they believe in what we're doing. Finding the right investors is really critical.
Yeah, and I've heard that point a lot of, like you said, dumb money, but I do think for founders, and I've heard this over and over, finding folks that have connections, that have insight, there is so much more to it than just the cash. Cash will get you only so far. So I think
Absolutely.
that's such a great point.
Absolutely, yep. And the other thing I'll say this too, when it comes to raising money, as founders, there's also a tendency to focus on dilution or loss of control, right? My personal opinion and what we've experienced is that's not something you want to spend a lot of time worrying about, right? What that does is if your focus is on just preventing dilution, you tend not to evolve, right? And you tend not to move fast enough. If the ultimate goal is to build a big, successful business that provides value, everything takes care of itself in the long run.
So what was the process of actually, one thing we always hear is that it's a full-time job to raise money, that, you get a lot of these no's before you have to get 100 before you get one yes. What was the experience for you, and what advice would you have for other people looking to raise on how they should go about it?
So interestingly enough, we've actually been extremely fortunate in terms of how we got connected with our investors and how we did a raise. I mean, it's not typical. I will say this, but we were extremely fortunate. Our initial round of fundraising consisted of one conversation, which is supposed to be a 1 hour call, 1 hour meeting. 15 minutes into it, we had an yes.
That's pretty rare, right?
It is. But that also goes back to finding the right investors, right? I mean, our backers was somebody that was experienced in the space, had invested in a prior generation company that did data security. 15 minutes into it, he was like, "Yep, I get it. I want to be a part of the process, and I want to back you guys." Truly, I didn't actually believe what I was hearing. I'm like, "Yeah, this can be real." But that was also.
Well, and I think your point is, do your research, find the right people, and that helps with that.
Yeah.
From that perspective, I'm kind of curious, what stage did you decide to do it? Because I actually have a lot of conversations with people about, how early do you go in to look to raise money? And a lot of the belief that I tend to follow and think is, you want to get to a certain point of revenue so that you've got validation. You talk about the dilution thing, but really making sure that you're walking the door with some leverage when talking to potential investors.
I mean, which is true. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, the validation can be multiple things, right? And it doesn't necessarily need to be revenue. It may be a prospect that's willing to talk about how they've looked at your product, believe your product, and helps communicate how it solves a big need for them. That is, in many cases, plenty. I mean, there are companies that have gotten funded with just a concept with nothing but a deck of slides. That's true too, but that typically happens to folks that have been through the startup process before and have proved themselves. Revenue is great. Really, that's the best validation you can get. You get customers and revenue. Nobody can argue with you. But that's not necessarily always needed. If you can find the right prospects or right industry leaders that say, "Yeah, I believe in this product. I've looked at the technology, and here's how it's going to help me or help this industry," that can be plenty. That can be plenty. I mean, founders typically will do one or two things, as I've seen. You either try to raise money too early, or you wait too long to raise money. There's really no magic metric about that. I would flip on both sides and say, raise money before you think you need it, because it'll help you grow faster and scale faster. It'll give you a better chance of being successful. Don't worry about dilution too much, because really that's dilution can't be the sole focus of your existence. It's got to be, the sole focus has to be about how you can go conquer the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're on top of the mountain, that dilution really doesn't matter.
Right.
So yeah, I will say this. I think you should raise money before you think you need it for most founders.
Yeah, it's great. Just kind of going off what you said about customers, it sounds like you've had the good fortune with investors and some of these other things and your background. What about that first customer? You said revenue, it helps prove it. So how did you get that first customer?
It took us personally, my co-founder and I, 2 years to get our first customer. Nothing easy. There's nothing easy about it. We really nurtured them, cultivated them. I can't even tell you the number of calls, the number of emails, the number of presentations we've done to that one group. But two things. One is they've turned out to be one of our biggest advocates today. And they were patient enough to deal with us as we went through this journey. But it took us a long time to get that customer.
Yeah, and was that someone that you had targeted specifically, or was one of many that you were trying to talk to?
At the beginning, we were throwing spaghetti against the wall.
Okay.
It literally, seeing what would stick. We had, I probably had, I'd say somewhere between 200 to 250 conversations in the first 18 months. The many no's with a few yeses can't give you, can't tell you how many no's it was. But we persisted with a few of them that ended up being really big opportunities for us. Obviously they understood what we were trying to do, and they were patient with us as we tuned our product, optimized our pitch to specifically address the need they had.
And that was you personally making phone calls, kind of the grind of having to reach out to people, right?
They were just my co-founder and I. Yeah, honestly, I never thought I'd launch that many calls or send out emails, but it is a part of the process.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point is, for me, is that for most founders, like you said a couple of times throughout this conversation, is that, you're going to be hands-on, you got to dig in, and you got to have that perseverance, and especially gaining that first customer is often one of those areas that's just a little bit of a grind to get through and make happen. But once you do and get over that, it can be, big success.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure there are organizations and products that have had it easy, but for the most part, it's not easy.
I would love to hear a little bit, just from a psychological standpoint, what did that feel like going through that period of time, not getting any customers, putting yourself out there, constantly getting knocked down, told no, yet keep getting up and continuing on? Were there any moments where you felt like, you second guessed the business or the model? And how did you personally maintain that drive to move forward and make it work?
Believe me, I woke up a lot I'm sure my co-founder did too. We woke up a lot of mornings asking ourselves, what are you guys doing? The belief in the technology, the belief in that we had a product that could provide value is what kept us going. I would say support from the family. Those are probably the two reasons why we kept going.
That's great. Earlier you said, as far as investors goes, finding the right people, that was important. On the other side of it, from the team perspective, growing out the Sotero team, how did you find, how has the team grown, and how do you continue to find good people that help you realize your vision?
We've added, we're actively adding people. We're growing right now. We're hiring people, especially on the go-to-market side, as you would say, sales and marketing. We've been fortunate, and some of the, when we talk to people, and I won't say interview, right? It's more of a conversation about finding the right fit, which is a big part of it. Interview feels feels like you're interrogating something and interrogating somebody, and that's not the right way to approach it. It's got to be a conversation to find the fit, philosophically as well as skills-wise, right? I mean, you just said something about in a startup, you just have to be ready to do everything. That's a big part of it, right? And what we do is evaluate or validate that they kind of work with the two tenets that we have is work with integrity and be resilient, because challenges haven't stopped. I mean, as a startup, you're constantly, whether you're growing or finding new customers, you're scaling, there are always going to be challenges. Finding people that interact with everyone in the organization with integrity is critical, because you don't want to have a lot of guesswork to do about how somebody's feeling. Did they tell you the complete truth? Did they hide something? You don't want that, because that just takes away a lot of energy, right? And makes you less productive. Being ready to deal with setbacks is a big key part of the process. It's really key, right? I mean, even today, I mean, even though we're growing and scaling and we've gotten traction, there are still more no's than yeses. Being ready to deal with that, being ready to deal with customers saying, hey, we want something today. They're a big customer. You can't really say no. Constantly dealing with that, being resilient is a big part of it. In short, I think you, as founders in a startup, you need to figure out what your key beliefs are going to be as you build out the culture, and make sure that people buy into that culture.
It's a great point. We talked to a lot of founders about that culture piece. How intentional have you been about the culture? You talked about integrity, resiliency, great, traits, but how much have you kind of intentionally put into that, you and your co-founder?
We have spent a lot of time validating people as we bring new people in, because, like I said, I mean, one bad hire, right, or one person that doesn't fit into the culture can be extremely detrimental, especially in a startup. Right, you have to count on everybody in the organization to be successful. You can't have one person that's not bought into it. We spend a lot of time validating that they fit into the thing, and I mean, we demand that. Let me put it that way: we demand those two qualities of all the people that we bring in. I mean, it's just because we're focused on the bigger picture of being successful as an organization, and we're kind of aware of what even a single person that doesn't buy into the thing can cause.
Great. So just kind of as we're getting close to wrapping up, what's the future look like for the product and the organization? What do you see happening in the next 1 to 3 years?
Really, right now, the product, the company for us, it's all about scaling. I mean, it's about we've gotten the product to market. It's about finding more adopters, finding things, fine-tuning some of the remaining features of the product in terms of supporting unstructured data, so we can really roll out this notion of a security fabric, right? We have all the pieces in place, including the go-to-market aspect of it. Now it's just a matter of scaling.
Yeah, that's great.
It's excellent. So I was just going to jump in, Andy, before we ask kind of our last question here and wrap up. Purandar, where can people who are watching that want to learn more about Sotero, perhaps more about you, where's the best place to look and connect and
Sure.
Pay attention?
So on our website is soterosoft.com. Purandar Das on LinkedIn, or Das GP on Twitter. Sotero Secure on Twitter, which is our company Twitter as well. Please feel free to reach out. Happy to share with you our journey and how we can help.
Awesome.
So just kind of a final question that we ask everybody is, if you were able to go back in time to have coffee with yourself right before you started the company, what advice would you give?
I would have said confidence and belief in yourself. Much earlier than when I made the jump. Really, that's all that's needed. If you're confident about what you believe in, you're good to go.
It's awesome. Well, Purandar, thank you so much. Purandar Das from Sotero, encourage you guys to go check out the site and pay attention to what he's doing. We really appreciate your time. I'm going to pop up one last comment here. Cool stuff. Very interesting. It's awesome what you're doing. And hopefully we, see you guys continue to grow and do great things. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. We will see you again next time. And until then, thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, everybody.